Welcome to the Real Estate Agent Superstars podcast. I'm your host, RJ Baxter with Intercap Lending, and I have got with me today Robert Passafiume with the Metrowest Team at Real Broker. Robert's a powerhouse agent, and he's got some really interesting niches and stories from his career in real estate. He specializes, or one of the things he does is the divorce niche, which is really interesting. So we're going to talk about that. And he also was really involved back during the housing crisis and still to this day with the REO market. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So welcome to the show, Robert. Appreciate you being on.
Thanks, RJ. I appreciate you having me as well. I'm pretty excited to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. You've been in the business for a while now. Is that right? When did you start?
Started back in 2002, so about 21 years. Yeah.
Okay.
I started out in origination, so with a subsidiary of Metrowest. So that's what I started out.
Yeah.
I was about 22 years old. So I started out with that. Went to an individual brokerage, and then because the refi boom completely shut off in 2003, moved into the REO foreclosure capacity, and that just spiraled into what you see today.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. So yeah, I remember Metrowest back in the day.
Yes. I had been with their subsidiary, which was Town and Country Credit, I think a year or two after they took on the main sponsor for the Super Bowl. And yeah, it was only a couple of years that they held that sponsorship, and then kind of everything started to happen, and Metrowest kind of fizzled out as quickly as they came to be.
Yeah, totally. So then just explain to me how the exodus happened to go into the REO space and to become a realtor ultimately.
So in the REO space, that was happenstance. It was really just because REO companies at the time that disposed of assets, bank-owned assets on a national level, were just growing exponentially because everybody's default, everybody being most of the large banks, had a large default portfolio that just continued to get larger and larger. So they were hiring anybody they could, and then would just train people in REO. I'd have to say, that was my main experience that kind of started getting me to, I guess, continue my career in real estate. And not only that, I mean, the REO experience itself has taught me so many things that I feel I've brought to my profession today and how I handle business. It's what also drove me to be the agent I am today. When I was in REO, I was fortunate enough to help dispose of 2,500 assets, homes across the nation in about the 13 years I worked in that capacity. And with that, you get to learn a lot about the way different states do real estate, the way different real estate agents do different real estate. So it definitely taught me a lot. Like I had mentioned previously, one of the biggest things was when problems arise, which oftentimes they really do when homes are left vacant in certain cities and states, there were always constant problems. And with those problems came, something that had to be fixed, something that had to be resolved, whatever the case may be. So oftentimes you found yourself running towards the problem instead of away from the problem. And I feel that's really something I took with me as an agent that I always recommended with any new agents that come up is when a problem arises, it's best to put your heads together and run towards the problem than away from the problem, because it's just going to fall apart from there.
Absolutely. I think people sometimes are they're embarrassed or they're scared to admit that there was a problem or they made a mistake. And I agree. The best way is just to acknowledge it, own it, and run towards it and solve it. I think people appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. With that, there were experiences that, obviously were kind of just challenges in and of themselves. I know I'd mentioned prior, one of the challenges I had was selling two mobile homes stacked on top of each other. And that was in Anchorage, Alaska. With that being in Anchorage, Alaska, there are certain lenders that lend on those homes that are
Really?
yeah. So most lenders think, how do you get a loan on something that's two mobile homes stacked on top of each other, with siding completed on the side. As I had mentioned before, one of them
Huh.
was, you couldn't tell it was a mobile home on the second floor until you removed a portion of the drop ceiling and you saw the axles still remained from that. So what I found is that some of these local municipalities had banks that were a little bit more forgiving and understanding when it came to the, dare I say, creativeness of one's individual trying to create a two-story home. So oftentimes some of these homes would be originated on, again, even as wild as they might sound, just because the local bank was aware of I guess the condition of the home, the risk of the home, and the habitability of the home. So yeah, definitely some wild things. I mean, I working from anywhere from houses that people were murdered in, and dealing with the aftermath of that once the bank actually took possession of the home, to homes that had literally siding being stolen every night. Previous owner would come, take a piece of the siding, walk off with it, and yeah, that was very interesting. When you contact authorities in East St. Louis, unless you have anybody that tells you that they are witnessing it and they will do that in writing, apparently it never happened. Very interesting. Yes, very interesting.
Huh.
So,
What are some other interesting stories that you had back then?
a couple of the most wild ones was probably another one up in Anchorage where someone literally left the home after they knew that it was no longer their asset, left the front door open and left the home all winter. So once you walked into the home, the entire home itself was frozen. So multiple layers of ice on each side, both on drywall, ceilings, etc. So it went through an entire winter of basically being frozen. So thawing that out with dehumidifiers and thawing it out in a slow time frame, so it just didn't gush water everywhere, was very interesting. Also, I had one where the gentleman thought that because this bank had taken his home, he was going to pay them back by pouring cement in every P-trap and sewer line at the home. So,
Awesome.
yeah, not knowing that a deficiency judgment is going to be affected by how much the home was resold for, and in turn, he's still going to be on the hook for what remains. But yeah, those are some of the interesting ones that I definitely had. Some of them are a little bit more interesting, but probably not as interesting as those that just really affected your ability to, how am I going to resell this? Like, you literally had to think outside the box. Is someone going to buy this as is? Is someone going to buy this with all its problems? Do I need to repair it? Does the bank want to focus on this? Because the bank's not in the business to own homes. They're in the business to lend money. So majority of them didn't want these homes in their portfolio for long periods of time. So oftentimes it was liquidating them. And if you can't change location, what can you change? Price. So oftentimes that's really what you had to convince the bank, is that you're going to have to get this priced appropriately considering what you have.
Okay, so what year or years was this that these kinds of things were happening? Was this before the housing crisis or during when this whole thing went down?
Actually, right before the housing crisis. So 03 to about 2010 was the biggest push. Obviously, after 08, the Dodd-Frank Act happened. There was a lot of checks and balances that were put in with the origination of loans. So with that being said, the floodgates started to slow a little bit in 2010 because there were things that were being done, such as modifications, etc. So I'd have to say from 2003, really hefty, to 2010, and then up to about 2013. And so forth. What really seemed to be happening is the volume. The foreclosures will always be there, just like in the savings and loan crisis in the 80s to the housing crisis in 08. It's the sheer amount. And prior to 08, the banks had a lot on their books. After 2010, a lot of people started paying their mortgages. The origination, or the creative origination that we had, started to move out of the system. So therefore, people started paying their mortgages, people that were truly able to afford what they had purchased or are paying on them. So I'm not saying we won't see it again, but maybe not at the range we did back in 03. So yeah, I used to tell people before it was popular and after it was popular. So
Right. I didn't realize they were happening to that extent before 07, 08.
Yeah, I mean, a majority of them were, obviously there's still crises, or not crises, but circumstances like individuals lose their job, etc. But I mean, if you look at the adjustable rate mortgages and the interest onlys that were being originated on, those really started in the 90s. So that late 90s. So that creative lending didn't, things didn't start falling off the cliff and the arms didn't start adjusting until year 5, 6, 7, 8. That started putting those adjustments in 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005. And that was just the big floodgate getting ready to open of all the foreclosures. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So do you still have your finger on the pulse today with that market?
Absolutely. I feel for a couple of reasons. One is just partnering with people that still manage those properties, depending on if it's just 1 per year up to 10 per year, whatever volume they might have, I still continue those relationships. My expertise was in short sales, disposing of bank-owned assets, and handling those assets and knowing what the bank requires for them to be not only maintained and looked at from a property management standpoint, but liquidated. So I still try to keep my finger on the pulse, knowing that hopefully I got into the business young enough that it might come full circle. And if it does, hopefully I'm still in the business that I can take advantage of being able to assist people or banks. And that.
Gotcha. So what do you think's going to happen with today's current market? With what's going on?
I definitely don't see foreclosures coming back anytime soon, to be honest with you. We're going to need a pretty big effect to happen nationwide, kind of what we just went through COVID. And COVID didn't even, even with the loss of jobs, everything, both the government and the public reacted so quickly that didn't put us in the same boat. Also, everybody now has equity, where back in 2008, no one had equity. So I just feel there's more equity in the market now, that if this happens, it's not going to be for a while. And let's not forget that the new builders are still not at the pace they're supposed to be for building enough for as many as people are now becoming homeowners. I mean, even if we look at millennials, if as soon as they turn around 30, 32, they're buying. And if we don't have enough homes, it's still going to just create that supply and demand problem, which seems to be hindering a lot of markets across the nation. So I still feel until we break out of that log jam and there's enough inventory out there, I have to say that demand or that drive in pricing is still going to be there. I mean, shoot, we're at 7.5% rates now and still helping buyers. It's just that listings right now are taking forever. So I think it's still there, but I think it's quite healthy.
Totally. It's much more healthy than it was a couple of years ago. And you're probably seeing this too, but it seems like houses that are priced right we're seeing multiple offers. They're getting bid up. So those types of houses are moving pretty well, like well-done houses that are priced competitively.
Absolutely. When I sit down at a listing appointment now, I have that discussion with individuals that, hey, the average days on market in your current neighborhood is 30 to 45 days. So consider yourself lucky if getting any type of, significant traction or action prior to that. But if it's priced appropriately and it's show ready, and it's marketed appropriately, good pictures, not iPhone pictures, making sure the home is, if it's not staged, at least it's staged with what the owner has still in the home. Homes can sell in over a weekend. Especially if they're in desirable neighborhoods. I was fortunate enough to have $1 million listing in Todd Creek up here on the north side of town. Again, average days of market were 41 in Brighton, and I got it under contract in 4 days, priced over $1 million. But that home and Todd Creek, people literally look at those developments year over year, waiting for a home to come up so they can purchase it. So with those highly desirable locations, and like you said, priced right, priced appropriately, and show ready, it's going to sell.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you, like someone listening to this might be thinking, this REO business, is this something that I could get into? Is this something that's a niche that people could get into these days, or is there just not enough activity there?
That's a great question. I have a lot of new individuals that come through our team looking to try to, basically capitalize on what they hear with the doom and gloom in the news. I still think it's a niche that people can be going towards, but they just have to realize how long they may wait. You have to understand the market. I try to explain to other individuals, if you don't see the people that are experienced in REO going after the REO clients, there's probably a reason, because there's not enough inventory for anybody to flourish in that. But being prepared is a different story. Sometimes I feel like all the people that were capitalizing on, whether it be the foreclosures and the wave of those, I feel like they built those partnerships before everything broke, before the dam let go. So to me, new people that are coming into the market should start trying to at least establish relationships. I mean, that's what our real estate's about, is relationships. So educating yourself on that, establishing relationships may prove to be beneficial, in maybe 3 years if stuff starts to tick up, 7 years, 8 years. I have to admit, I tell people the hardest working real estate agents that you would really find in REO were REO agents. Agents that I could send to the city in Detroit to get a fine for weeds removed, or, someone in St. Louis that would go to the authorities when siding's being taken off the home and have a police report filled out. So doing things oftentimes above and beyond what a normal fiduciary duty of a realtor is. So if people are open to that, 100%, I think it's worth looking into, educating yourself on, building those relationships with possible anticipation of when that windfall might happen again.
Okay, nice. So how would a person go about building those relationships?
More so it's the banking industry. So what I mean by the banking industry is building the relationships directly with the bank. The banks found in this whole crisis that they're easier to dispose of the assets going directly to a realtor that has structured their team and processes around liquidating an asset. Whereas if you're not able to do that, it's not that easy. So you have to go and establish those relationships with direct individuals that work with the big banks. The people that work in the loss mitigation departments, short sale departments, and honestly, convincing them why you should be their go-to person next to the other individual. And oftentimes it was those people, just like any new realtor, those people that are hungry, are willing to do what their competition's not willing to do. I mean, that's the biggest thing for anybody that wants to succeed. That's what I wake up and think about almost every day. If I'm not here at the office, what is my competition doing? What are the people that are the other 44,000 agents that are licensed in Denver? What are they doing? Are they sleeping in? Are they also trying to build these relationships? So I think, and I approach everything with that thought almost in mind, is what is my competition doing? So to again, circle back, it would be building those relationships directly with the individuals that work at these banks. It's not easy. Other than going through LinkedIn, it's definitely not easy, but it's all about kind of who you know.
Yeah, it's if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Right, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
So what kinds of things are other people not willing to do that you are willing to do, or you did in the past?
I think one of the big things. I mean, let's look at the number one complaint of realtors: communication. Whether that be updates to their client, communications back to their clients, communications with other realtors. So things that are just communicate, be proactive. Don't wait for someone to ask you, update. Some of those things that agents aren't willing to do, to be honest with you, pick up the phone. So many agents are still not willing to pick up the phone or cold call. I mean, the original people that have made it in this business have been the people that are not only consistent, but the people that are still willing to pick up the phone. Picking up the phone is a huge scenario. Don't get me wrong. I always try to emphasize to new agents that come in the business that, tailor to your audience. Right now, if you want to be a successful agent, you may tailor to a millennial. You may tailor to a boomer. A boomer doesn't want a text. A boomer wants a phone call. A boomer doesn't want a digital signature. A boomer wants you to sit down at the kitchen table and bring the contract with you so he can see it. So tailoring that to each one of those individuals and knowing how to tailor to your audience is really, to me, one of the huge things to allow for success at anything.
Yeah, totally. So do you mentor other agents right now?
I do not. I do not. I've
Okay.
always emphasized that I plan on, but right now, to be honest with you, RJ, is my difficulty is I feel that how do I say this? I feel like almost that my expectations are too high. So what I've realized, and a lot of my
Mm,
mentors have told me, is that if you expect to go out and hire a bunch of Roberts, you're going to be disappointed. Because
mm,
most agents, as I'm sure you've seen too, even with lenders, is a lot of people fizzle out. One,
mhm.
two out of four don't make it past that second year. Um, so with that being said, it's doing things like that really help you, I guess, keep that ball rolling, keep the momentum, keep things going.
Yeah, totally.
So that is
Well,
probably why I haven't yet, is because I have that expectation that I guess I want to hire 4 or 5 people and get a couple people that are similar to me. But in reality, it's probably hire 15 to 20 to find those individuals that want to work full time, be an agent full time,
mm,
answer their phone at 8 o'clock at night, do a showing at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning. So type of
yeah.
those things. So once I solidify that, and honestly, it's all about systems. If we really want people to communicate and touch base, if I'm going to mentor someone, I want to be able to provide them that system. So it's almost flawless and kind of foolproof, if you will, to provide
Mm.
the level of service I'm expecting that I provide for them to provide as well. So
What kind of systems do you have in place?
So what I like to do is I like to utilize the CRM system that I have right now. I'm using Follow Up Boss. I always love working smarter, not harder. So a lot of the systems I
Mhm.
have in place are automations. So when I start to go through a file, I start to think of the touch bases that I want automated. Some of that automation could be just an automation to remind me to email my client a weekly update of what milestones we hit this week and what milestones we're hitting next week. Some of the systems I have is I have several steps that I do in my listing presentation. Everywhere from getting the paperwork together to the CMA and the approach again of my audience of who's going to be on the other side, whether I'm bringing in an entire booklet with a CMA and the listing paperwork prepped, or if I'm just bringing a CMA because I'm sitting down discussing and looking at photos and pictures on my phone because the person's much younger and wants to look at everything digitally. So these systems are in place that not only allow me with reminders, but also automation that either A, automatically emails the client, and or B, reminds me to touch each file. So that's just a hint of some of the systems I have ingrained or the systems I've put in place with my CRM.
I think that's so key because if you're like me, if I leave it to myself, inevitably I'll forget something.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
being a human being.
absolutely.
Even if I'm 95% remembering everything, it's not good enough.
Yeah, you try to
So,
tell people if it's not on your calendar, it's not going to happen. So
yeah.
it's really living your life by that. And with that automation comes honoring that calendar. If something comes up and says, hey, send this person this, one of the next things I put in with the system is my past client follow up. So I noticed the first 2 years that I was in real estate, I'm like, I haven't picked up the phone and called any of my past clients. And one of the main reasons was, what am I going to say? Like, hey, how's it going? How's the house? So I felt I didn't have any value adds. So I literally sat down and created a monthly touch base with prior clients, what I
Hmm.
was going to say, and what I was going to send. And they're all pretty much handwritten notes. Then I took all that automation and I built automation in the CRM that reminds me, okay, send Joe Smith card 4 that has this written on it. So I mean, literally, I reach over to my folder, I grab out a thank you card, I write exactly what's in my CRM, put in the address, and put it off in the mail. So
Hmm.
things like that really, were some of the holes that I found within the first 2 years that I had to build the system around to really help me out.
That's so good because so many of us fall short on our past clients.
It
Um,
huge.
Yeah, I mean those are people that already know, like, and trust you. So why not follow up?
Exactly. And I found myself, I'm like, man, those are like almost the low hanging fruit that I'm not even communicating with. It's simply because I felt like I didn't have anything to say. I mean, that's funny for a
Right.
realtor to say that out loud. You know, I didn't have anything to talk about, so I didn't call them. Like, that's all we do, you know? So that was,
Yeah.
that was definitely an epiphany where I was just like, wow, you know, this is, like you said, these are people that already trust me. I've already built that rapport, built that relationship. It should be the easiest one to circle back with and continue to build it and see if you can get referrals. I mean, right now, I'd have to say good 60% of my business is coming from referrals. So, yeah, that touch base is imperative. So many people forget it.
So how long does your follow-up system go with your past clients? Is
A
it
year.
forever?
So no,
A
just
year.
1 year. Yeah. So right now I mean, forever should probably be something that is built, considering everybody what moves every 5 to 7 years. So at least have a 5 to 7 year, you know, follow up. But right now
Mhm.
it's just yearly, at least yearly with the cards. You know,
Oh,
it's
once a year, you mean, or for 1 year?
no, just yearly. So basically once a month for an entire year.
Okay.
So basically 12. You're going to get 12 touch bases, whether that be a phone call inviting you to a client quarterly event, or it's going to be a card, usually a handwritten card from me. Just, hey, what have you done with the home? I'd love to hear. I have vendors. Oh, it's your 6 month mark. Some of it's just statements,
Mhm.
and some of them are actual questions to engage. But yeah, so I'm the kind of guy now that you pointed that out. The next couple of weeks, I'm going to have to develop something so I know it's longer than 1 year as a follow up, because most people
There you go. There you
don't
go.
have something to do after a year. It's usually that 5 to 7 year mark.
Yeah, and I think that long term is important. I
Very
mean,
much so. Very much so.
for me at least, I have people on my systems forever until it bounces back.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Or they unsubscribe, right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
which
pretty much.
yeah, yeah, totally. So I'm kind of geeking out on this a little bit. Tell me about these 12 touch points. What are your reasons for reaching out? What are these notes? What have you created within those 12?
So a couple of first of all, the notes are just exactly that. That people know I took time to literally just grab a piece of paper out, write down a personal note, whether it be 2 sentences, 3 sentences. And to be honest with you, RJ, I have the worst penmanship of most people I know. So I
Perfect.
know they know it comes from me because it's usually doesn't look like it looks like someone wrote it in high school. So some of the touch bases are simply just, hey, you know, the first one is kind of a humor one. I say, hey, you know, you've had 30 days to test drive this home. Do you like it? Or should we sell this one and find you another? You know, some of it is just literal comedic. Hey, don't forget about me. I think the second month is, hey, I hope you're now getting settled into your home. Have you made any changes? I'd love to hear about them. By the way, have some lunch on me. And oftentimes I'll include like a Subway card, a Chick-fil-A card. And then one of them says, you know, I ask a few questions if you need vendors. And then I say, hey, you know, enjoy a coffee on me. And it has a Starbucks card. So basically it's just checking in to stay top of mind. Some of it might be a little bit of humor. Some of it might be, hey, what have you done? I'd love to hear, to continue to engage with you. If you've taken down a wall, if you painted a room, put in carpet, whatever the case may be, I'd love to hear about it. And then wherever it falls, they should be invited to a quarterly event that I do with my clients. I usually try to do a quarterly happy hour, lunch, whatever the case may be.
Hmm.
So that's usually coincides with the 4 phone calls. So everything else is a note, but the 4 phone calls are, hey, you know, RJ, I'd love to invite you to my quarterly event that I'm going to hold at the Lazy Dog. You know, I'm inviting all my prior clients for this quarter. Love to have you and your wife, or whatever the case may be. So those were the steps really that were just to stay in front of them. I didn't feel like the questions of what you would ask someone, you know, maybe in year 3, 4, or 5, you know, because then you might be able to spur some thought of, hey, maybe we need a bigger den, we need a bigger kitchen, we need a bigger this. And then that discussion starts getting had. And guess who created that discussion? The realtor, you know. So
Yeah.
those are ideas that I would probably take into the 2, 3, 4 year, you know, touch marks. But the first year is literally just top of mind, you know. And the reason why I do it in the first year, for all you newbies, take note, is because most people, when they're buying a home, what are they doing at work? What are they doing with their friends? What are they doing, you know, at the supermarket? They're talking to anybody saying, hey, I'm buying this new home. I'm buying this new home. Oh, it's got a pool. Oh, it has
Just
this. Oh,
move.
yeah, absolutely. And then, oh yeah, who helped you? or, great. What's your realtor's name? These are when usually those discussions are being had. So if you're staying top of mind, new agents, that's how you stay. You stay top of mind because these people are talking about their real estate transaction at work. So if you knocked it out of the park, what better way of getting good word of mouth than the person that just bought and thinks you are the perfect person that they purchased through?
Totally, totally. So when you're calling them to invite them, or when you interact with your past clients, do you proactively ask for the business, or do you just let it naturally come?
Um, it's funny you say that. I've always been don't ask for the business. And it's I don't know why, other than maybe not feeling like I want to put them in that scenario of, hey, do you know anybody else that's looking to purchase or sell? Because I kind of feel it's goes without saying, but I also know I might be failing on some opportunities because I don't simply ask. So I can't give you a straight answer in that, RJ. I feel like sometimes it's inherently something that's being unsaid. Hey, if you know anybody else, I'm writing you a personal card to you with a card to go get some lunch. I hope you would recommend me. Then ask for it. I don't know. I'm one of those agents too, RJ, that's everything's about relationships, and purchasing a home or selling a home is all about teamwork and everybody working towards the common goal. If you don't trust me and I don't trust you and you don't like working with me, why am I going to try to force this? It's not a cohesive relationship. So why do we continue moving forward? That's all I need someone to do is continue a relationship with me and then give me bad word of mouth. So I guess I'm one of those individuals that I should, but I don't. I usually do not leave on the card, hey, if you know anybody that's looking to buy or sell. I have to admit, out of all my cards, I think only one of those says that go out in that year.
Mm, okay. Well, speaking of relationships, I definitely wanted to touch on your divorce niche and what you've done with
Yeah.
that. So tell me more about that. How long, or like, how did you get involved with that segment?
So first and foremost, it was a friend that's an attorney. So I have a friend that's not only a divorce family attorney, but he's also a injury attorney. And he had called me one day because I placed him on my boomerang mailer. So I do mailers every month.
Mm,
And one of those mailers I do is to past clients, and to some, I guess you could say it, professionals, depending on what they do. I send them boomerang every month. And for anybody that doesn't know what boomerang is it's a little coupon that goes out on a monthly basis. Instead of little tchotchkes with your face and name on it that serve no purpose, it's actually a coupon for something local to wherever your client resides. So I had sent my friend that's an attorney, hey, I sent him on this, and he literally called me, and just like it would be a cliche, Robert, guess why you're top of mind? I needed a value for one of my divorcing clients on their home, and I pull out my drawer, and your notepad and your boomerang coupon for this month are sitting right there. So I figured I'd give you a call and see if you could provide me a CMA on this property. So I provided him a CMA. In about a week, he says, what are your thoughts on maybe listing this home? It was in Broomfield. And I was like, I would love the opportunity to do so. And with that opportunity, I knocked it completely out of the park. I was able to not only sit in the front room with both these individuals, let's say sharing their animosity and dislike for each other. Um, but I was still able to knock it out of the park and keep emotion out of it. As a realtor, you have to learn to keep, and as an originator, I'm sure, RJ, you have to learn to detach that emotion from it. And I think that has helped me with that, in helping people that have animosity towards each other or in that current situation. It allows me to kind of go weather the storm, rise above it, because I know it's only temporary. But so I knocked that first opportunity that he gave me out of the park, and he was fortunate enough over the next year and a half to hand me 2 or 3 more. As a realtor, when someone just calls you and says, hey, do you want a listing? This is kind of where you're like, yeah, how do I replicate this? How do I make sure my phone rings more with these opportunities? So just making sure you knock it out of the park each time you do it. I think one of the ways to knock it out of the park, and what that means is, with a divorce attorney, the less they have to interact with the client, the more you just handle it, the better. So attorneys like people making their job easier. So, if you somehow create a great rapport and great relationship, that there's less phone calls from their clients to them, I think you're boding well and doing well with the transaction.
Right, right. So have you sought out other divorce attorneys since then?
Great question. So yes. So a couple of things. The first thing this has probably been over the last 2 years. So I knew this year was going to be a little bit slower. So with that being said, I took my attorney friend to lunch the last month of the year, and literally said, "Hey, what I've been doing for you, I want to scale, and I want to scale this with more attorneys. I want to know, what's a good approach. You're an attorney yourself. Are pop buys with a cake, pop buys with a lunch coupon, are they going to be received well? Should I continue to send out boomerangs? Whatever the case may be." So he gave me a few ideas. Not only that, he gave me about 10 referrals that were attorneys that he knows that are local here on the north side of town. So I immediately started putting them on my boomerang. I started sending them just touch base letters. "Hey, my name's Robert," introducing myself. This is, I'd love to maybe bend your ear, take you to lunch, and tell you how I might be able to make your divorce, situations easier. For the first couple of months of the year, it was only about 10 to 12 attorneys that I really built this campaign around. And then now I've purchased a list of about 100, 150 here on the north side of town, because I feel, just like people, it's a numbers game. So if I'm going to go towards the divorce attorneys, I can't just market to 10. If I market to 10 and the conversion rate's 10%, that means 1 out of 10. So I need to market to 100. So
Right.
I'm really starting to scale that, and part of the scaling will be just putting them in boomerang. Now that boomerang has different slogans and different statements, divorce specialist, let me make your divorce client's job easier, whatever the case may be. It's all tailored to the divorce attorney. So when I log in, I have a consumer boomerang account and I have a divorce attorney boomerang account. So just working on doing that, and then just letters. And I'm going to stop by with the Popeyes. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to bring, if they won't let me take them to lunch, I'm going to bring them a gift card, enough where they can go to lunch themselves. And that's not going to be the Subway card or the Chick-fil-A. That's probably going to be like, a $30 or $40 gift certificate, or even 50 to maybe Red Lobster. So they remember, so that's been this year's, you could say, scaling portion, is taking that USP and amplifying it, basically trying to take it to the masses. So yeah, divorces aren't easy, but marketing to the attorneys is also not easy. So that's where I've been taking it this year, to see if I can scale it.
Have you found some to be receptive, or are you getting a lot of resistance?
I'm getting a lot of crickets, to be honest with you. And I think it's also, again, the numbers game. But also just, I feel attorneys aren't the easiest ones to get a hold of, to have someone just bend their ear. I mean, let's be frank, most of them are paid by the minute of their time. So just giving up their time to someone just to try to sell them on things. I also feel like there's a lot of agents out there that market to them that really don't know how they're going to make an attorney's job easier. And I think overcoming them as well and doing something different is what's going to help hold me apart. I think that's also what I've been able to play off of some of my successes, to start to think, okay, what is my competition doing? And they're not getting traction. So why am I going to emulate the same thing that everybody else is? Why don't I step back and look how I can do this differently? Like, is anybody really stopping by with a card? Another idea is attorneys have oftentimes like conferences and gatherings. One of them is called Law Day. So oftentimes a municipality or a county will have Adams County Law Day, Jefferson County Law Day. What better way to maybe show up and start relationship building than, hey, can I stop by and bring breakfast burritos for 100 people? Can I stop by and maybe just have a little booth with some pens and some notepads, or, whatever the case may be, where I can market to them in a different manner, where everybody else might be calling them. I'm actually showing up to their conferences and bringing breakfast or sponsoring something of that matter. So that's where I'm going to try to change it up this year, is to introduce or build those relationships in a totally different manner than a majority of my competition is doing.
I like it. I like it. Well, that sounds like a really effective niche. I mean, that's probably a lot of times it's a couple transactions, I would guess, because
Correct.
you're helping both X's.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And then if both those X's are fortunate enough to be in a financial position, you can turn that one deal into several. Absolutely.
yeah,
So that's always
yeah,
been, that's
I love it.
the end goal, if you will.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
nice. Well, what are some other words of advice you'd have for newer agents or agents looking for some new ideas?
one of the main things that I was thinking of is honestly the don't be afraid to pick up the phone. Communication is key. The biggest complaint that we have against realtors is, again, we don't communicate. So oftentimes just shooting an email, making a phone call is going to differentiate you from everybody else. And then the other two things are, again, what I've already talked about is literally, what is my competition doing? If they don't have the willingness to pick up the phone and cold call, if they don't have the willingness to circle prospect a listing that they were fortunate enough to get, if they don't have that, then you need to be that person if they're not doing it. And then tailor to responsibilities, or excuse me, to personalities, not responsibilities. Lastly, tailor to personalities. I see so many people that offer a certain product or level of service and feel that it tailors to everyone when it really doesn't. I try to explain to some of the new agents that have come through that you're going to have to bring a totally different listing presentation for someone that's bought and sold 4 homes than someone that is selling their first home. You need to have a different listing presentation if the person's 24 years old and lives in Wash Park, or if the person's 65 years old, lives in Broomfield and has owned 4 homes. So being able to be flexible and react to different personalities and have the foresight, okay, this person's probably not going to react well if I just bring my phone and be like, hey, I just need you to sign this listing right here. The agreement will come digitally. To me, tailoring to your client and your audience is huge. I'm not saying, have a different step and a different process for everything, but just it's sales 101. Know your audience.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing is I already believe in the product. I love the product. It's know my audience. So that would be those would be the biggest tidbits that I would give to people that I feel has really helped success. Because my wife asked me the same question when I was like, hey, I'm been doing all this, babe, for 15 years. I think I want to be licensed. What are you going to offer that everybody else doesn't offer? I had to answer that question before I even got licensed.
Like right off the bat.
Right, exactly. So I guess over the last 5.5 years, I have to develop a thought of, okay, what am I offering? What am I doing differently that no one else is, or only very few are?
That's really wise that you say that.
Thanks.
It's, something that someone with so much experience would know. And I think it seems like you have a natural sense of that too, which is, just a testament to the way you do business.
Absolutely. And that would probably circle back to that whole, question on whether if I'm mentoring anybody right now, that would probably be the one reason, is because I'm not going to find people that think things proactively like the way I do. So I guess building a system to how to build those people. I mean, everything comes with repetition and desire to want to do it. But I think I have to rip that Band-Aid off and start realizing I'm going to have to go through quite a few people to start building and mentoring a lot of people to make it worth my time and worth their time and beneficial for everybody involved. So,
sure. Well, if someone wants to connect with you, how can they find you?
Online. So I have not only my they can go to my website, Robert Sells Denver. So I have a website up right now. You can also just give me a call or shoot me a quick email. But yeah, if you look me up, there's not a lot of Passafiumes, let alone in Denver, Colorado. So if you're fortunate enough to be able to remember every letter of my name, you'll find me really quick on a quick Google search. But
okay, I'm sure.
So, but yeah, that's how you can reach out to me or give me a quick call.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I really appreciate it, Robert.
Absolutely, RJ. Thanks so much for having me, man. I really appreciated this. This was cool.
Awesome. Well, for all you listeners out there, please subscribe to the show. Give us a 5-star review if you're so inclined, and we really appreciate you listening. And once again, my name is RJ Baxter with Robert Passafiume, and you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.